The following talk is offered freely to ensure that no one is ever denied access to these practices and to these teachings. If you feel inspired to make a donation to support this offering, you can go to my website at jonathanfoust.com. While you're there, you can also sign up for a monthly newsletter designed to support you in your practice. Thank you and enjoy. In our Year of Living Mindfully program, we're kind of starting off the year exploring what it's like to get discipline and routine going. So we're doing a practice called 30 Days of One Observance and One Restraint. Something you're going to do and something you're not going to do, and then pay attention to what happens. And it can be quite revealing. I thought maybe we might even try that if people are interested in the new year as a way to kick off the new year. One of the restraints that I took on a while ago was to not to watch YouTube videos. Because I realized how much I was just like a drunken monkey on my iPad, you know? It was just the most insane, tracking the most insane things you can imagine. So when I restrained from it, it was really hard, and then I realized, wow, I've got all this time available that I didn't have before. But I also noticed that I started meandering on YouTube again. And sometimes there's some like intelligence behind it. Usually there isn't. But the topic for tonight is like the skillful use of will and the skillful use of surrender in your practice. So I stumbled across, of all things, a little biography of Rodney Dangerfield. It's really quite an amazing story. And I've always loved Rodney Dangerfield. When I was a kid, one of the first jokes I ever heard from his when he said, I was an ugly kid. When I played in the sandbox, the cat kept trying to cover me up. I thought that was the most clever, sophisticated joke I'd ever heard in my life. And what I found out through this, and you can find it on YouTube, is that after 10 years of trying to make it as a stand-up comic, he gave up, and he sold aluminum siding. But during those years, he kept writing jokes. And so when he decided to try to get back into it, he had a duffel bag full of jokes that he wrote all those 11 years, some of his classics. My psychiatrist told me I was crazy. I said I wanted a second opinion. He said, okay, you're ugly too. When I was born, the doctor came out into the waiting room and said to my father, I'm very sorry. We did everything we could, but he pulled through. So I'm really struck by the creatives, how to keep those creative juices going and the resilience that they call on. I ran across this one I loved. And someone says, a message to my writer friends, just keep going. I was rejected over 48 times before I got my 49th rejection. So I'd like to talk about what willful practice can do for you. Developing your resilience, not just in meditation, but in life. But also to talk about the other end of your capacity to let go, the capacity to surrender. And they're both very powerful, exquisite practices to develop the muscle of resilience, but at the same time to develop the muscle of release and surrender. So I ran across this story, which I thought was really quite interesting, about the discovery of the Hawaiian Islands. Hawaii was discovered around AD 1000. No one knows the exact date, of course, by a group of seafaring Polynesians who inhabited and explored many of the islands of the South Pacific. If you look at a map of the world, you'll notice that Hawaii is one of the most isolated spots on the planet. So it's already incredible that it was discovered so early in human history. But what they did to get there makes the story even more amazing. Because of its isolation, they would never have known Hawaii was even there. They suspected it was there, though. They noticed a bird called the golden plover, which migrated north out into the open water every year. Land must have been out there somewhere, but they just couldn't see it. So they set sail from the Marquesas Islands to follow them. The island is as close as you can get to Hawaii, but it's still about 2,500 miles away. Nowadays, it takes roughly 30 days to sail from Hawaii from the Marquesas using modern-day equipment. Back then, they were using only carved wooden boats and their own understanding of naval navigation. The Polynesians followed the birds closely, but they could always fly a little faster than they could paddle. They could only keep up with them for short distances. At some point, they would lose track and have to turn back. Each year, they would try again, picking up where they left off the previous year. Years passed by, and they kept getting further and further out into the Pacific, but still they never saw land. According to the documentary, it took the Polynesians 400 years to eventually reach Hawaii using this method. 400 years. Imagine the determination and perseverance you need to do this. After generations of hard work, belief, determination, and uncertainty, they reach their goal. It's an amazing story. But we all have things in our life that we've really wanted, and things in your life that you've pursued. And there's a certain potency in that feeling of accomplishment. In fact, in positive psychology, the 5 qualities of happiness, of having a sense of purpose, feeling engaged, having quality relationships, having a sense of meaning. The 5th is a feeling of accomplishment. Having that sense of accomplishment is deeply fulfilling to us. And so, as I often mention, when we engage into any spiritual practice, we're really engaging into the mythical hero's journey. Something calls you. And usually there's denial. And then there's a call, and we respond, and you set off on a path. And when you set off for what you want, you call on resilience and perseverance to get there. There's setbacks, there are trials, there's wounding, there's learnings, there's wisdom that you develop on your path. And when you set out on your path, it's very, very helpful to know where you're going, to have a goal. And when you have the goal in mind, then you want to find the roadmap so you don't waste too much of your time and energy to get there. So this quality of grit and perseverance is really critical. A lot of studies, many studies that look at people who are successful in life and people who are happy in life, they've really determined that it is not intelligence. It's not being naturally gifted. The one quality is grit, the quality to persevere. And it's a wonderful element to develop. And it also translates into your meditation practice. How you train your attention in meditation is how you train your attention in life. When I started getting interested in the techniques of concentration, the techniques for calming, I didn't realize how hard it was, particularly the training in meditation. One of the first retreats I went to was doing the classical practice of anapanasati. And that's primarily the primary anchor that we use here. Anapanasati, the word anapana is breath, and sati is remembering. So it's remembering the breath, remembering the present moment. And of course, there are other anchors you can use, such as sound and feeling in the body, but one of the classical techniques is noticing the experience of breath. So this first retreat I set off on was, you would just sort of notice the general breath, the breath of the belly or breath of the nostrils. But then at about day 3, the instruction was to be aware of the breath outside your body. So not the gross movement of the breath inside, but the subtle movement of the breath on the outside, which is right here at the little triangle below the nostrils. Incredibly subtle. And as I tried that, I would immediately get swept away. It was just so subtle. I thought I would never get it. But because I was doing a retreat where we were there for 10 hours a day, with no reading, no writing, no talking, there wasn't anything else to do except sneak in and read the back of my toothpaste tube, which was all I had to read. And over time, I began to feel a sense of arriving. And there's a very interesting element around this sense of perseverance, of concentration, and we'll do a little practice together. The concentration is deeply enhanced by relaxing. It's also deeply enhanced by cultivating a sense of well-being. So let's just do a few minutes just to kind of try this on. So if you like, you can close your eyes. And you might just take a few long and full breaths. Let the breath be full and deep and smooth. It's kind of a willful inhalation and a relaxed exhalation. And with this sense of willful breath, you might notice if you can feel the movement of the breath just below the nostrils on the upper lip. And now release control of the breath. And sense if it's possible to detect the subtlest of sensation here. And now you want to bring in some relaxation. Relax your tongue. Relax the lips. Relax the muscles of the face. Soften the belly. Palms of the hands. And soles of the feet. And as you relax, you might also bring in just a sense of well-being, of well-wishing. You might sense if you can invoke a quality of kindness. And for the next minute, just sense what it's like to deeply relax and to intimately feel this subtle movement. And now completely relax. Let the technique fall away. And with your eyes closed, just relax and feel. Is it possible to sense the subtlety of the breath in the foreground and to notice everything else in the background? Relaxed and alert. And if you like, you can deepen your breath and open your eyes. You may or may have not noticed a few things just in that little bit of practice. That there can be a byproduct of calming as you develop the sense of one-pointed awareness. Over time, you can develop a sense of steadiness. And in this present moment awareness becomes the foundation for all the other practices. It's the foundation for developing that sense of the witness, of noticing the stream, for the practice of open monitoring, just openly monitoring what's passing through. It's the foundation for calling on compassion, kindness, and bringing that into your practice. And it's the foundation for open awareness, for surrendered awareness as well. This sense of cultivating concentration, kind of the perseverance of coming back again and again and again, is the foundation. It's why we always say, you begin again and again in this form of practice. You come back and you re-arrive, you settle, and then you broaden attention. When you're lost, you come back, you re-arrive, you settle, you broaden your attention again. There's the classic teaching story about this practice of concentration. In yoga, it's referred to as dharana. And dharana is one-pointed attention. It's the story of Arjuna, from the Bhagavad Gita, the classic warrior. And there were three young men being trained in archery. And they were told that their job was to shoot a bird out of a tree at a certain distance. So the first one is taking aim, and the instructor says, "What do you see?" And this young man says, "Well, I see the tree, and I see the tree limb, and there's the bird." And the instructor moves on to the next young man and says, as you're taking aim, what do you see? And this young man says, "Well, I see the tree limb, and I see there's a bird on the tree limb." He moves on to Arjuna and says, "As you take aim, what do you see?" And Arjuna says, "I see the eye of the bird." That's concentration. The capacity to narrow and sustain your attention. That capacity cultivates a sense of presence that keeps your keel in the water when you're beset by all the natural difficulties of life. However, there are two sides to every coin. While concentration is a tremendous power, and it really is kind of a superpower, to stay focused, undistracted, if you're not aiming for the right thing, it can be a little challenging. A good friend of mine was really, really wanting a particular job as CEO of a company, and his whole career was moving toward this high prestige job. And he was in line for it, and then because it was a family company, he got moved to the side, and he was biding his time for these years, waiting for the possibility of this job. And on one retreat, he was thinking about it, and he thought, "I don't think I want this job." And it was a revelation when he realized, why would I want the hassle of that job? It's everyone who's done it is burned out. Why would I set myself up for that? And it was this really powerful revelation for him. He realized that what he was aiming for his entire life was not what he wanted. So there was quite a bit of a meltdown, and then kind of a realization of what he really loved, which was working with groups and working with boards, and his life completely shifted. And it's sort of been a little bit of my own nightmare, is that in my nightmare, I'm climbing a ladder, and I'm getting really, really good at climbing the ladder. And I get really, really high up on this ladder, and then I realize it's on the wrong wall. And that's why it's so important to really reflect on your deepest intention. As has been said, the greatest regret of the dying is they were not true to themselves. So it's so important to know what you really, really deeply want before you engage all that focus and resilience. So focus and concentration and perseverance is really, really powerful. But then there's another side of the equation. And we talk about how practice has different stages. There's the kind of the stage of developing presence, kind of developing the sense of witness, of noticing what's changing. We can also sort of pause and investigate what's occurring. But we can also explore what it's like just to simply rest in presence itself. So a story again, and I was on retreat, and I've shared this in the past, but I was really working on concentration. And quite often when you do an intensive retreat, the focus of the first couple days is concentration. So then when you're more here, then you can begin to explore more of the investigation practices and the allowing practices. And I was doing everything I could for concentration, of relaxing and bringing in goodwill and cultivating one-pointed focus. And I'm really working hard at it. And my mantra was sort of like, remember your anchor, remember your anchor, remember your anchor. And one particularly frustrating meditation, toward the end, I just thought, oh, forget it. Forget the anchor. And then suddenly, I just felt this incredible expanse and this incredible sense of well-being, this kind of like infinite sense of spaciousness arose. It was a marvelous experience. And then we did some walking meditation, and I came back and I was sitting, and then I found myself saying to myself, remember to forget your anchor. Remember to forget your anchor. So there's something very powerful about what it's like to drop manipulation, to drop trying to control your experience, and simply notice the natural presence that's here. So let's try on another little meditation here. If you like, you can close your eyes. And again, you might bring your attention to your breath. This will be just for a few minutes for this practice. And if you'd like, you might again relax and soften. Relax the muscles of the face, the tongue, the lips. And let all of your attention, your one-pointed attention, come to the sense of the breath at the nostrils. And as you know, there are some of the pointing out instructions. I'll just offer a few. You might sense if you can determine if there is a temperature differential between the inhalation and the exhalation. Can you sense that subtle moment of stillness between the in-breath and the out-breath? And what happens now if you let the anchor drop away? Or you might explore the following question. What happens when you try not to be aware? And again, you might gently deepen your breath. If you like, you can open your eyes or you can remain with them closed. So did you feel a shift of some kind from sort of one-pointed attention to dropping the concentration? And I love that question of trying not to be aware, because it can heighten this sense that awareness is always there. That no matter what, there is some quality of attention, some quality of cognition that's happening. And so many traditions point toward this practice of surrender. Sometimes it's called choiceless choice. And when you're simply, the great phrase from Werner Erhard, that the quickest way to be happy is to choose what you already have. There's just that sense of just saying yes to what's here. Sometimes it's called open monitoring. That your attention is wide open, but you're simultaneously monitoring the natural flow of your experience without trying to manipulate it or change it at all. Surrender is a very powerful shift in consciousness when you can do it. As the Buddha said, nothing whatsoever is to be clung to as I or mine. And there can be these moments, these glimpses where there's no I, there's no me, there's no mine. There's just a sense of awareness. The experience of surrender is really compelling. But of course, you can't make it happen. And sometimes when we're rushing into surrender, trying to have the experiences of surrender, we run into the near enemies of surrender. Again, the other side of the coin. On one side of the coin, there's sort of this exquisite sense of simply resting in presence, letting I, me, and mine fall away. But there's certain states that kind of look like surrender, but they're not. And one of them is resignation. Another is indifference. And there can be a tendency toward what's called premature transcendence, where we're sort of like, oh, it's all fine when it's not, spiritual bypassing. So part of the key here in practice, and this is where the practice gets more sophisticated and more nuanced, is recognizing it's not just watching the breath. The goal is not to be aware of your breath. The goal is around cultivating moment-to-moment awareness of what is here. And so as you are practicing meditation, my sense of it is you're practicing a form of self-diagnosis. That when the mind is scattered, when there's lots of emotions, when it's difficult to pay attention, that's a good time to pay attention. Because if you gather your attention back in the here and now, you will notice that there will be a settling. There'll be a gathering. There'll be a calming. You're kind of collecting your energy, collecting your power. But when you're here, then you can begin to look around. That's when you can widen and broaden your attention and begin to notice this flow or the stream of your experience, the phenomena of shifting sensation, of stories, of moods, and you can begin to recognize the habitual thoughts, the habitual beliefs, so the realm of insight. You can, from time to time, in this practice of vipassana, if something is strong and persistent, strong physical sensation, strong emotion, strong mental states, like a fixated mind, you can turn from your anchor to investigate that phenomena, to look closely at it, to look closely at how your relationship to it, to see where the holding on is, to see where you might let go. Again, that's the level of insight in this practice. But then there are times when you can let it all fall away. when you can explore what it's like just simply to sit back and begin to be aware of awareness itself. And it's why this practice is so highly intuitive as you become more sophisticated in the practice. There's no right way. There's only your way as you practice and evaluate the different techniques that really work for you and resonate for you. Ultimately, all these practices lead us toward an inquiry into what is the nature of reality? What is the nature of you? So I'd like to share a little reading and a little reflection. And I think if you like, you can close your eyes, and I'm going to read it all the way through, and then I'll read it through again and give you a little bit of space to kind of contemplate the words. And this is really exploring more around the nature of spaciousness, more into the nature of emptiness itself. So as you close your eyes, send your mind into the external expanse of sky. Observe whether or not it comes and goes. If the mind, when observed, neither comes or goes, then look inside toward your mind and observe whether or not there is someone causing thoughts to arise. If there is no agent who makes the movement of thoughts, observe then whether or not the mind has color or shape. When you arrive at an emptiness, free from color or shape, observe then whether or not it has a center or a fringe. When you see that there is neither center nor fringe, then observe whether or not there is an inside or an outside. This awareness, free from an inside or an outside, is open like sky. It is penetrating wakefulness, free from limitations. Within the vast and open space of this all-embracing mind, all phenomena manifest like rainbows in the sky. So let's slow this down. In your own way, reflecting on these words, send your mind into the external expanse of sky. Observe whether or not it comes or goes. And look inside toward your mind and observe whether or not there is someone causing thoughts to arise. If there is no agent who makes the movement of thoughts, observe then whether or not the mind has color or shape. When you arrive at an emptiness, free from color or shape, observe then whether or not it has a center or a fringe. When you see there is neither center nor fringe, then observe whether or not there is an inside or an outside. This awareness, free from an inside or an outside, is open like the sky. Within the vast and open space of this all-embracing mind, all phenomena manifest like rainbows in the sky. If you like, you can deepen the breath, and you can let the eyes open. For many of us living in these incredibly challenging times, arriving in presence is so important. When your mind gets called away by all the challenges and all the stress, to be able to call it back is critically important. But it's important not to neglect the power of surrender, the power of letting go. It's been said that there are three ways that we experience awareness. One is contracted awareness. That's when we're struggling. And when you look at life through contracted awareness, there's a wonderful phrase that says, when a pickpocket sees a saint, all he sees are the pockets. And we're simply caught in the struggle of trying to figure things out. The next level of awareness is what we can call expanded awareness. And when your awareness has expanded, then there are more solutions. Then you begin to see the patterns. Then you can begin to see possibilities where they didn't exist before. You can begin to see more into the nature of reality. And the third level is what we could call resting in pure awareness, where you are just aligned in the here and now, where there are no problems, where you are simply resting in presence. So the foundation is to arrive, to come back from the wandering mind, arrive in the here and now. And as you do, then to open and sense the flow, sense your relationship to things. And from time to time, as it feels right for you, sense what it means to let go and to let it be. And sometimes in the letting go is when new insights and new possibilities can emerge. So I'd like to close with one of my favorite little readings on letting go. If you like, again, you can close your eyes. Happiness cannot be found through great effort and willpower, but is already present in open relaxation and letting go. Don't strain yourself. There is nothing to do or undo. Whatever arises in the body-mind has no real importance at all, has little reality whatsoever. Why identify with it, become attached to it, and pass judgment upon it or yourself? Better to simply let the entire game happen on its own, springing up and falling back like waves, without changing or manipulating anything. And notice how everything vanishes and reappears, magically, again and again, time without end. Only your searching for happiness prevents you from seeing it. It's like a vivid rainbow which you pursue without ever catching, or a dog chasing its own tail. Although peace and happiness do not exist as an actual thing or place, it is always available and accompanies you every instant. Wanting to grasp the ungraspable, you exhaust yourself in vain. As soon as you open and relax this tight fist of grasping, infinite space is there, open, inviting, and comfortable. And as you're ready, you can gently deepen the breath. As you're ready, you can open your eyes. Thank you so much for your time and your attention. May you have a spacious, relaxed, and surrendered evening and beyond. Enjoy your evening, and I'll see you next week.